I stare at my computer screen, the familiar blue and white corporate interface staring right back at me. Another day, another pile of reports to complete, emails to answer, and tasks that would go unappreciated. The same routine, the same office, the same condescending voice ringing in my ears every time I dared to exist in my boss's line of sight. Daniel Hayes. He stands by the glass wall of his office, arms crossed, speaking to some younger executives who laugh at whatever smug remark he just made. His sleek navy blue suit is perfectly tailored, his tie crisp, his hair combed back with precision. He radiates the confidence of a man who thinks he's invincible. And why wouldn't he? He runs this company, or at least, he believes he does. I glance at my reflection in my monitor's darkened corner. 40 years old, a simple dark sweater over a professional but modest blouse, my brown hair tucked into a low bun, and no flashy jewelry or expensive designer bags to flaunt. I'm invisible to them. And that's exactly how I want it. A sudden email notification pops up on my screen. Subject, Performance Review, Urgent. A sigh leaves my lips before I even open it. Of course. Another performance review, another excuse for Daniel to remind me just how unimpressive he finds me. My fingers click on the message, my eyes scanning the expected passive-aggressive phrasing. Olivia, please report to my office immediately. We need to discuss your contributions to the company. Contributions. Right. I push my chair back, grab my notepad, and stand up. Around me, the younger employees, fresh out of Ivy League schools, eager to climb the corporate ladder, barely acknowledge my presence. They're too busy networking, talking loudly about their weekend plans at exclusive clubs, and name-dropping CEOs as if they were childhood friends. I walk across the office floor, past the open workspaces, and into the executive wing. Daniel's office is at the very end, a glass-encased corner suite with a perfect view of the city's skyline. His assistant, a young woman with an expression that screams exhaustion, waves me in without a word. She knows the drill. I step inside. Daniel doesn't look up right away. He's pretending to be busy, flipping through a file as if I'm not worth his time. I stand there, hands folded over my notepad, waiting. After a few moments of silence, he finally sighs, setting the folder down with an exaggerated motion. Olivia. Mr. Hayes, I reply, my tone neutral. He leans back in his chair, lacing his fingers together as he looks at me with the same bored disinterest he always does. I've been reviewing some numbers. Your department's output is, well, it's steady, I suppose. I say nothing. I already know what's coming. But steady isn't enough, he continues, his lips curling slightly. You've been with this company for, what, over a decade now? And yet, I see no real ambition. No drive. You do your job, but that's all. You don't stand out, Olivia. I hold his gaze, unaffected. He wants a reaction. He won't get one. You see, we're building something dynamic here, he says, gesturing vaguely at the glass walls as if that somehow explains everything. We need people who push boundaries, who innovate. And frankly, Olivia, you don't fit that mold. Still, I remain silent. Because none of this is new. Daniel has always been like this. Dismissing people like me, the ones who don't fit his carefully crafted corporate image. The ones who didn't graduate from the right schools, who don't network in the right circles, who aren't desperate to impress him. But the thing is, I never needed to impress Daniel Hayes. Do you even have career aspirations? He asks, raising an eyebrow. I mean, do you plan on doing this for the rest of your life? There's a mocking undertone to his voice, as if he finds the idea of someone simply working a steady, honest job laughable. I finally speak. I like what I do. He lets out a short, humorless chuckle. Right. Of course, you do. He taps his fingers against the desk, eyeing me critically. You know, Olivia, I've been wondering if your position is really necessary anymore. With all the advancements in automation and AI. There it is. The veiled threat. The subtle implication that my job, my career, my livelihood, is hanging by a thread at his whim. I nod slowly. I see. Do you? He tilts his head slightly. Because I don't think you do. This company is evolving. And frankly, I don't think you have what it takes to evolve with it. I resist the urge to smile. Because if only he knew. If only he knew that I had been watching. That I had been listening. That I had been studying every move he made, every decision, every backroom deal. That I had access to things he couldn't even begin to imagine. But I say none of that. Not yet. Instead, I nod again. Is that all, Mr. Hayes? Something flickers in his eyes, annoyance, perhaps, at my lack of fear, my refusal to plead for my job. He was expecting desperation. He was expecting me to beg. He clears his throat. For now, I turn and walk toward the door. As I reach for the handle, his voice stops me. Just a piece of advice, Olivia, he says. If you want to be taken seriously, maybe try looking the part. Professionalism is about more than just showing up. I glance over my shoulder, offering him a polite smile. Thank you for your insight, Mr. Hayes. And then I leave. Back at my desk, I place my notepad down, exhaling slowly. Around me, the office continues as if nothing happened. As if Daniel Hayes didn't just sit in his glass castle and decide my worth based on nothing more than his shallow perception. But that's fine. That's exactly how I want it. Because Daniel thinks he's untouchable. He thinks he holds all the power. And soon, he's going to learn just how wrong he is. I step out of Daniel Hayes' office, my heartbeat as steady as my footsteps. The heavy, suffocating air inside his glass prison gives way to the rhythmic hum of the office outside, phones ringing, keyboards clattering, the occasional bursts of conversation among employees trying to sound more important than they are. I return to my desk and sit down without a word, pushing aside the tension still lingering from that meeting. The emails have piled up in the last half hour. I click open the first one, barely reading the words as my mind replays Daniel's smug expression, the condescension dripping from his voice. You don't fit that mold. Do you even have career aspirations? Maybe try looking the part. The words bounce off the walls of my mind, but they don't sting the way he hopes they do. No, I've long since built an armor against men like Daniel Hayes. But what he doesn't know, what he will never see coming, is that this is the last time he will ever speak to me like that. The sharp click of my heels against the floor interrupts my thoughts. I don't even have to look up to know who it is. Ashley Parker. She's one of Daniel's protégés, fresh out of business school, eager to make a name for herself. I used to think she was different, that maybe she'd see through the toxic culture here. But ambition does strange things to people. She leans over my desk with the confidence of someone who has never been dismissed, never been belittled. How'd it go? She asks, feigning concern. I glance at her, my expression unreadable. Fine. Ashley smiles in that way people do when they think they've already won. He's really pushing for a company-wide restructuring. Wants fresh minds, you know? People who can think big. Is that so? I reply coolly. She tilts her head. You should consider stepping up more, Olivia. Show some initiative. Daniel values people who. He values people who remind him of himself, I interrupt. Ashley hesitates for a fraction of a second, but it's enough. I return my gaze to my screen, signaling the end of the conversation. She lingers just a moment longer before straightening. Well, just some friendly advice, she says before walking away. I exhale slowly. They think I'm a relic, a placeholder taking up space in an evolving company. That's fine. Let them. The hours pass as they always do, the monotony of corporate life lulling the office into a steady rhythm. Reports, calls, meetings. A never-ending cycle of work that keeps people too distracted to realize how little control they actually have. Then, at precisely 5:30 p.m., it happens. Daniel steps out of his office, smoothing his tie, his usual smirk firmly in place. He stands at the edge of the main office floor, surveying his kingdom like a self-proclaimed ruler about to issue a decree. Everyone, listen up, he calls out, loud enough to demand attention, but with just the right amount of casual arrogance. I have an announcement to make. The chatter dies down as heads turn in his direction. I don't move. I simply fold my hands in my lap and wait. Daniel clears his throat, his eyes sweeping over the room before landing on me. His smirk deepens. After careful consideration, I've decided that we need to make some changes around here. It's time we focus on efficiency, on fostering a workplace that thrives on forward-thinking individuals who bring real value to the table. I hear the not-so-subtle rustle of employees shifting uncomfortably in their seats. No one likes announcements like this. They know where they usually lead. Daniel clasps his hands together. And with that in mind, I want to personally address an issue that has been long overdue. The silence thickens. He turns fully toward me. Olivia, we don't need deadweight like you. Get out. The words hang in the air like an unexpected slap. A few gasps ripple through the room. Some employees exchange nervous glances. Others avert their eyes, pretending to be engrossed in their screens. Daniel folds his arms, waiting for my reaction, his smirk unwavering. He thinks this moment is his victory. He thinks he has finally rid himself of the insignificant employee who never quite fit into his world. I meet his gaze, unflinching. And then I smile. It's a small smile at first, barely noticeable. But it grows, slow and deliberate, until it's unmistakable. Fine, I say, my voice even. Fire me. A flicker of confusion crosses his face. Just for a second. Just enough for me to see it. He expected resistance. Pleading. Panic. Not this. He chuckles, but it's forced now, less certain. That's it? No argument? No pathetic attempt to keep your job? I shrug. If you don't want me here, then I won't be here. For the first time, the power shifts. He doesn't realize it yet, but it does. Daniel lets out a short laugh, shaking his head. Unbelievable. He gestures toward the HR director, who has been standing off to the side awkwardly. Make it official. The HR director, a man who has spent his entire career trying not to make waves, nods hesitantly and murmurs something about processing the paperwork. Daniel claps his hands once. Well, that's settled. He turns away, already dismissing me from his mind, already moving on to whatever comes next in his carefully curated world. But he has no idea what's coming. I gather my things slowly, deliberately, while the office pretends not to watch. Some look relieved that it's not them. Others seem uncomfortable, as if sensing that something about this moment is off. And then, just before I step away from my desk for the last time, I glance back at Daniel. I hope you're ready, I say softly. He frowns. For what? I just smile again. You'll see. And then, I walk out. As I step onto the elevator and the doors slide shut, I take a deep breath, a breath that tastes like freedom. Because Daniel Hayes thinks he won today. But tomorrow, at the annual shareholders meeting, he will learn the truth. He will learn exactly who I am. And he will never see it coming. The city hums around me as I step out of the office building, the crisp evening air wrapping around me like a silent embrace. The weight of Daniel's arrogance still lingers, but only in amusement now. He thinks I'm gone. He thinks he won. I slip my phone out of my bag and tap a number, one I rarely use, but one that now holds the key to everything. A low, familiar voice answers after the second ring. Miss Carter, the man on the other end greets me smoothly. Mark, it's time, I say, my tone unwavering. There's a slight pause. Then, a knowing chuckle. I'll have everything arranged for the shareholders meeting tomorrow. I assume you'd like the usual discretion until the reveal. Of course, I reply. Let's not spoil the surprise. Understood. I'll notify the necessary parties. See you at the meeting, Miss Carter. I hang up and slip my phone back into my bag. The walk to my car is slow and deliberate, my mind piecing together every step I've taken to get to this moment. The years spent working through the ranks, the patience, the silence, all of it leading here. Daniel never once considered that I could be anything more than what he saw on the surface. A forgettable employee, a woman too plain to be significant, too ordinary to be dangerous. But that's his flaw, isn't it? He sees only what he wants to see. And because of that, he has never questioned why I never fought back. But now, the game is mine. As I pull out of the parking lot, the memory of my father's voice echoes in my mind. Always watch, Olivia. Always listen. Power isn't in the loudest person in the room, it's in the one who holds the strings. He taught me well. I drive home, the city lights flickering through my windshield like tiny promises of what's to come. My house, a modest yet elegant estate just outside the city, welcomes me with its familiar stillness. I park in the driveway, step inside, and exhale as the door closes behind me. The world sees Olivia Carter, the undervalued employee. What they don't see is Olivia Carter, the majority shareholder of the very company that Daniel Hayes believes he rules. The house is quiet as I pour myself a glass of wine and settle into the large leather chair by the window. Tomorrow, everything shifts. Tomorrow, the man who dismissed me like an afterthought will face the truth of his own insignificance. I pull out my laptop, logging into my personal, encrypted accounts. The numbers appear instantly, a digital testament to my control. 92%. That's how much of the company belongs to me. For years, my father's legacy remained a secret. After his passing, I could have stepped into leadership immediately, but that would have been too easy. Too expected. I wanted more than power handed to me. I wanted understanding. I wanted to see the company from the ground up, to witness its inner workings without bias. So, I stayed in the shadows, taking a role no one would question. Working my way through departments, learning everything. The operations, the finances, the people. And all this time, Daniel never suspected a thing. His mistake was underestimating me. I sip my wine slowly, scrolling through the upcoming agenda for the shareholders' meeting. The formalities, the financial reports, the leadership discussions, it's all been carefully orchestrated. Tomorrow, Daniel will walk into that meeting believing he is in control. He will sit at the head of the table, addressing the shareholders with his usual bravado. And then, I will take it all from him. The thought sends a slow, satisfied warmth through me. I close my laptop, leaning back against the chair. Tonight, I rest. Tomorrow, I reign. Morning arrives like a quiet storm, steady and inevitable. I dress with purpose, sharp, calculated elegance. A tailored black suit, silk blouse, a pair of heels that click with confidence against the marble floor. My reflection in the mirror is one of poised control. No longer invisible. No longer overlooked. As I step into the car, my driver nods respectfully, pulling away from the house without needing directions. The drive to the meeting is smooth, the city moving past me like a world untouched by the power shift about to unfold. By the time we arrive at the sleek, glass-encased corporate headquarters, the building is already alive with anticipation. The annual shareholders meeting is the most significant event of the year. Strategic plans, financial standings, and most importantly, leadership decisions. Daniel will be walking into this thinking it's just another day in his empire. The security at the entrance barely acknowledges me. They still see me as the former employee, the woman quietly dismissed by the all-powerful Daniel Hayes. That illusion won't last much longer. I step into the elevator, watching as the floors count upward. The conference room is on the top floor, a vast space designed to impress, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city. The board members and major shareholders are already gathering, murmuring among themselves as they settle into their seats. And then, Daniel arrives. He strides into the room with his usual confidence, his presence demanding attention. Dressed in a pristine navy suit, he shakes hands with board members, offering easy smiles, believing himself untouchable. Then, he sees me. His steps falter, just slightly, but he recovers quickly. His lips twitch in amusement as he makes his way toward me. Olivia, he greets, his voice dripping with mock surprise. Didn't expect to see you here. Trying to sneak back in already. I hold his gaze, my expression unreadable. Something like that. He chuckles, shaking his head. Well, I suppose you can stay and watch. Maybe you'll learn how a real company is run. I don't respond. Not yet. A call for order echoes through the room as the meeting officially begins. Daniel takes his seat at the head of the long conference table, reclining comfortably. The chairperson of the board, a seasoned man with decades of experience, clears his throat and speaks. Before we begin, there is an important matter of leadership to address. Daniel leans back, smirking. I assume that's me? The chairperson doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he glances in my direction. Actually, he says, his tone even. As per protocol, our major shareholder will be overseeing leadership changes moving forward. A ripple of murmurs spreads through the room. Confusion. Uncertainty. Daniel frowns. What? That doesn't make sense. And then I rise. The room stills. Every eye turns toward me. And finally I speak. No, Daniel, I say smoothly. It's me. A stunned silence fills the air. Daniel's face drains of color, his confidence cracking for the first time. I watch the realization dawn on him, slow and agonizing. I watch him begin to understand what he's never considered possible. And I wait. Because this is only the beginning. The silence in the boardroom stretches thick and heavy, like a taut wire ready to snap. My words, simple, precise, still hang in the air, reverberating in the stunned expressions surrounding me. Daniel Hayes, for the first time since I've known him, is speechless. His face, once so smug and confident, has gone pale. His hands twitch slightly on the table, as if he's resisting the urge to grip the arms of his chair. He blinks once, then twice, struggling to process what he just heard. You. His voice is barely above a whisper, then sharpens. No, that's impossible. I tilt my head slightly, my expression unreadable. Is it? The board members glance at each other, some in quiet shock, others already calculating what this revelation means. I know these men and women, executives, investors, people who have spent years working under the assumption that Daniel was the supreme power in the company. Their eyes shift between us, waiting for an explanation. The chairperson clears his throat, drawing everyone's attention back. His voice is steady, unaffected. It is, in fact, very possible, Mr. Hayes. He folds his hands neatly in front of him. Ms. Carter is the majority shareholder of this company. She owns 92% of the stock. The room reacts instantly. A ripple of gasps and hushed conversation spreads around the table. Daniel lets out a dry, incredulous laugh. This is some kind of joke, right? He shakes his head, as if willing himself to wake up from a nightmare. She's an employee. A nobody. She was an employee, I correct, my voice calm but firm. And I was never a nobody. Daniel stares at me, disbelief twisting his features. How? I meet his gaze steadily. My father built this company. After his passing, I had every right to take control. But instead of walking in as the owner, I chose to learn it from the ground up. I worked every department, every level, understanding how it truly runs, not just from a boardroom, but from the foundation itself. I take a step closer, leveling him with a cool stare. And you never even noticed. Daniel's mouth opens, then closes. He looks around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to back him up, to tell him this isn't real. But no one speaks. No one denies it. Because it is real. One of the board members, an older man named Richard Lane, clears his throat. I must admit, Ms. Carter, this is quite unexpected. Why keep this a secret for so long? Because I needed to see the truth of this company, I reply smoothly. I needed to understand who is truly running it and who is holding it back. I glance at Daniel, my meaning unmistakable. He clenches his jaw, but I can see the panic beginning to settle in behind his eyes. He knows. He knows that everything is slipping through his fingers. All right, Daniel says abruptly, sitting up straighter. Fine. So you own stock. That doesn't change the fact that I'm the CEO. His confidence resurfaces, desperate, shaky, but still present. The board and the shareholders trust me to run this company. One reveal doesn't suddenly make you qualified to. The major shareholder has the right to oversee and initiate leadership changes. The chairperson interrupts, his tone professional. That is in the company's bylaws. Daniel freezes. And then I deliver the final blow. As of this moment, I say, my voice crisp and unwavering, I am calling for a leadership change. A collective murmur spreads through the room. Daniel shoots up from his seat. You can't do this. I arch a brow. I can, and I am. His hands slam against the table. This is insane. His eyes dart around the boardroom, looking for support. You can't just decide to remove me. This is a structured business, Not some family-run experiment. But the room is silent. The executives who once fawned over him are carefully avoiding his gaze. They aren't rushing to his defense. Because they know the truth. They know I hold the power now. And power recognizes power. The chairperson leans back in his chair, tapping his fingers lightly against the table. Ms. Carter, as the majority shareholder, has every legal right to make executive decisions regarding the company's leadership. That includes the removal of the CEO. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle. A vote, however, must be conducted among the board members for formal approval. Daniel's breath comes quicker now. He knows he's lost. But still, he tries. He turns to Richard Lane. You can't possibly support this. You've seen my work. I've expanded this company, brought in revenue. Richard sighs, rubbing his temple. Daniel. I've also seen the way you treat employees. The way you disregard people who don't fit your perfect little mold. I've heard the way you talk about them. Daniel blanches. Another board member speaks up, a woman named Evelyn Shaw. I'll be honest, Daniel. You've been on thin ice for a while. Your leadership style is abrasive at best, toxic at worst. She folds her arms. And if Ms. Carter is willing to take charge, then I, for one, am curious to see what she can do. A few others nod in agreement. Daniel stares at them, his lips parting as if to argue, but nothing comes out. He looks at me again, his face contorted with disbelief and growing fury. You can't just take everything I built. You built nothing, I say sharply, cutting through his last thread of denial. You sat in a chair and took credit for other people's work. You treated employees like disposable tools, ridiculed those who didn't fit your image, and ruled this company like it was your personal kingdom. I step closer, my voice dropping just enough that only he can hear. And now, Daniel, I murmur, it's time for you to see what it feels like to be powerless. His breathing is uneven, his fingers curled into fists at his sides. The chairperson straightens in his seat. Then let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of removing Daniel Hayes as CEO, raise your hand. One by one, hands rise. Daniel watches, frozen in place, as the count grows higher. His shoulders tense, his face twisting in barely contained rage as the realization sets in. It's over. When the final count is in, the chairperson nods. The vote is passed. Effective immediately, Daniel Hayes is removed as CEO of the company. A sharp inhale. A tremble in his fingers. His world has just shattered. I exhale slowly, watching him. He thought he was untouchable. He thought he would always be in control. But now, as he stands there, silent and defeated, I see it in his eyes. He finally understands. Daniel Hayes is nothing without the power he once wielded. And I am everything he never saw coming. A heavy silence settles over the boardroom as Daniel Hayes stands frozen, his mind visibly scrambling for a way out. His hands grip the edges of the conference table, knuckles turning white as if holding on to the last fragments of power slipping through his fingers. But it's too late. He's been removed. I remain standing, my gaze steady as I watch the truth finally settle in his expression. Gone is the arrogant smirk, the casual dismissal, the unwavering confidence he's always carried. Now, all that's left is disbelief, anger, and something else, something he would never admit. Fear. You can't do this, he finally breathes out, voice raw. You don't even know how to run this company. I tilt my head slightly. I know more than you ever did, Daniel. I've worked through every department, every level, while you sat in this room and called yourself a leader. My voice remains steady, unwavering. And now, it's time for real leadership. Daniel's eyes dart to the board members, looking for some last thread of support. But none of them meet his gaze. No one speaks for him. He is well and truly alone. He lets out a humorless laugh, but there's no amusement in it, only bitterness. This is a mistake. You think you're ready for this? You think you can handle it? He shakes his head. You don't have the guts for this job. I step forward slowly, my heels clicking against the polished marble floor. You think leadership is about arrogance, about intimidation. That's why you never saw me coming. Because I was never loud about my power. I let the words sink in before delivering the final blow. And that's why you lost. His jaw tightens, his breathing sharp and unsteady. The chairperson, ever neutral and professional, clears his throat. Mr. Hayes, we will arrange for your departure immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. At that, Daniel's expression snaps into something furious. You're kicking me out like a criminal? After everything I've done for this company. I cross my arms. No, Daniel. I am removing you because you have done nothing but serve yourself. The doors swing open and 2 security personnel step inside. Their presence alone confirms that this is real, final. Daniel stares at them, then at me, his breathing uneven. He clenches his fists, his shoulders rising and falling as he fights for control. For a brief moment, I wonder if he will lunge across the table in a desperate attempt to reclaim his authority. But then, his rage flickers into something else. Something cold and calculating. He straightens. You'll regret this, he says quietly, the threat curling around his words. You have no idea what you've just done. I meet his gaze, unflinching. Oh, I know exactly what I've done. For a moment, we just stand there, 2 forces locked in opposition. He studies me, as if trying to find some weakness, some hesitation. But there is none. Finally, with one last glare, he turns sharply and storms toward the door. The security team moves to follow, but Daniel yanks the door open himself, striding through it without looking back. The room remains silent long after he's gone. Then, slowly, conversation begins to stir among the board members. Some are murmuring in quiet shock, while others are already adjusting to the new reality of the company. I exhale slowly, then turn back to face them. Now, I say smoothly, shall we move forward? The chairperson gives a small nod of approval. Indeed, Ms. Carter. I take my seat at the head of the table, the seat that has always belonged to me, whether they realized it or not. And just like that, the company is mine. By the time the meeting concludes, the sun is beginning to set over the city's skyline. The board has accepted the transition, and plans are already in motion for a smooth shift in leadership. I step out onto the executive floor, the air different now. Lighter. As if the very building itself has exhaled a long-held breath. The news has spread quickly. Employees are murmuring in small groups, some staring at me with wide eyes, others exchanging quiet smiles. The fear that once clung to this place is fading. As I walk through the halls, I catch snippets of hushed conversations. She was the major shareholder this whole time? Daniel's finally gone? Maybe things will actually change around here now. I reach the main office floor, where I spent years being ignored, overlooked, dismissed. And now every pair of eyes is on me. Ashley Parker, the young executive who once advised me to step up, stands frozen near the conference room. Her expression is a mixture of shock and something close to admiration. Ms. Carter, she finally says, hesitantly. I pause, arching a brow. She straightens, her posture shifting. I didn't expect. You didn't see me coming, I finish for her, my tone neutral. She nods slowly. No, I didn't. Then, after a pause, but maybe that was the problem all along. A faint smile touches my lips. Maybe. With that, I continue walking. My path leads me back to my old desk, my former desk. The small, insignificant cubicle where I spent years observing, waiting, planning. I place a hand on the edge of it, tracing the surface with my fingertips. A symbol of what I was. A reminder of what they never saw in me. A quiet voice interrupts my thoughts. Miss Carter. I turn to see a young woman standing nearby, clutching a stack of reports. I recognize her, Emily, an analyst fresh out of school, always overworked and overlooked. Yes, I ask gently. She hesitates, then glances around as if gathering her courage. Is it true? You're really in charge now. I nod. Yes, it's true. She exhales, relief washing over her features. Then, does this mean things will change? I study her for a moment. I see the exhaustion in her eyes, the quiet hopefulness in her expression. She, like so many others, has endured under Daniel's reign, waiting for a shift that never came. Until now. I nod once, firm and sure. Yes, Emily. Things will change. She gives me a small, grateful smile before hurrying off. I turn back toward the vast expanse of the office. A sea of employees who have spent years working under a man who saw them as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. No more. Daniel Hayes underestimated me. He underestimated all of us. And now I will rebuild this company not with fear, but with strength. Not with arrogance, but with vision. This is only the beginning. I glance toward the executive offices, where Daniel's name still hangs on the door. Not for much longer. I pull my phone from my pocket, dialing a familiar number. Mark, my legal advisor, answers almost instantly. It's done, I say simply. Mark chuckles. And how does it feel, Ms. Carter? I step forward, toward my future, toward the company that is now truly mine. It feels, I say, my voice steady, exactly right. Daniel Hayes always thought of himself as untouchable. He built his reputation on power, on arrogance, on the belief that no one could take what he had. Now, he is nothing. The glass doors of the company's headquarters swing open as security escorts him out. His movements are stiff, his face contorted with fury, disbelief still lingering in his rigid posture. I watch from my office window, my gaze following the former CEO as he stumbles into the harsh reality of his downfall. He stops just outside the building, turning back as if expecting someone, anyone, to protest, to call him back, to tell him this has all been a mistake. No one does. The employees who once feared his presence now watch in silence, their expressions unreadable. Some exchange quiet glances, some whisper among themselves, but no one steps forward to defend him. And Daniel? For the first time in his life, he is powerless. A slow, deliberate satisfaction settles within me. Not because I revel in revenge, but because justice, true justice, has finally been served. Daniel Hayes dismissed me, humiliated me, treated me as nothing. And now he is the one being erased. I step away from the window, exhaling slowly. The office behind me hums with a quiet sort of tension, as if the building itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what comes next. Mark, my legal advisor, leans against the doorframe, arms crossed. Well, he says smoothly, that was satisfying to watch. I glance at him. It was necessary. He chuckles. And poetic. He steps inside, sliding a folder onto my desk. Here's everything we need to finalize his removal. All signatures are in place, and the transition of leadership is fully secured. I pick up the folder, flipping through the pages. It's all there. Daniel Hayes is officially gone. I close the file, setting it aside. What's the reaction from the board? Mixed, Mark admits. Most are relieved, some are cautious. They've never worked under you before, so they're waiting to see what kind of leader you'll be. He tilts his head. And the employees? I glance out toward the main office floor, where the staff is still adjusting to the news. They've spent years under a man who saw them as disposable. They're watching, waiting, hoping. Mark studies me for a moment, then nods. You know, Olivia, you did something extraordinary today. I meet his gaze. I took back what was always mine. He smiles faintly. Exactly. A sharp knock at the door interrupts us. My new assistant, a woman named Claire, who has worked tirelessly under Daniel's oppressive rule, steps inside. Ms. Carter, there's someone here asking to see you. I raise an eyebrow. Who? Claire hesitates. It's Daniel. The name alone sends a ripple of silence through the room. Mark lets out a low whistle. Well, that didn't take long. I exhale, then nod. Send him in. Claire looks surprised but quickly recovers. Of course. She steps back, allowing Daniel to enter. He strides in with forced confidence, but I see the cracks in his demeanor. He looks out of place in a room that was once his domain, the realization of his diminished status sinking into his stiff posture. I don't offer him a seat. He doesn't deserve one. Daniel's eyes flick around the office before settling on me. We need to talk. I lean back in my chair, steepling my fingers. About? He exhales sharply. You don't understand what you're doing, Olivia. A dry chuckle escapes me. Oh, I understand perfectly. He shakes his head, frustration tightening his jaw. I built this company into what it is today. You think you can just step in and replace me? I don't think I can, I reply coolly. I have. His eyes darken. You'll regret this. You don't have the experience, the connections, I cut him off with a sharp gaze. I spent years studying this company from the ground up. I know its strengths. I know its flaws. I know exactly how to make it better. I pause, letting my words sink in. And I know all of your mistakes, Daniel. His face twitches. What mistakes? I smile, slow and deliberate. Do you really want me to list them? For a moment, I see something flicker in his expression, something close to panic. Because he knows. He knows the backroom deals, the mismanaged accounts, the secrets buried beneath years of unchecked power. And now he knows that I know. I lean forward slightly. Here's the reality, Daniel. You're out. Your time here is over. And no amount of threats, no amount of arrogance will change that. He clenches his jaw. You think you're better than me? I tilt my head. No. I know I am. The silence between us stretches, charged and final. Then, Daniel lets out a slow breath, straightening. His expression shifts, calm on the surface, but beneath it, I see the seething resentment, the silent promise that this isn't over for him. But it is. He turns toward the door, hesitating for just a fraction of a second before speaking one last time. You have no idea what you've just done. I smile. Oh, Daniel. My voice is soft, edged with finality. I know exactly what I've done. And with that, he walks away. As the door clicks shut behind him, the weight of the moment settles fully into place. The reign of Daniel Hayes is over. And now, the future of this company is mine to shape. Mark lets out a low breath. Well, that was dramatic. I chuckle. He does love theatrics. Mark shakes his head. You know he's not going to take this lying down. I nod, already anticipating it. I know. But that's not my concern anymore. I turn toward the window, the city stretching before me like an open canvas. This is my beginning. A new era for this company. For its employees. For me. Daniel Hayes underestimated me. And now, he is nothing more than a lesson in what happens when you dismiss the wrong person. I exhale slowly, steadying myself for the road ahead. Because this is only the start. The moment Daniel Hayes disappears from my office, the tension that has clung to the air like static begins to dissolve. I let out a slow breath, watching as the door clicks shut behind him. It's done. For the first time in years, the company is free from his suffocating grip. Mark, still standing near my desk, gives a low whistle. Well, he muses, arms crossed, that went about as well as expected. I exhale, turning toward the city's skyline. He won't let this go. Mark nods. No, he won't. Men like him don't know how to lose. I smile faintly. Then this will be a lesson he'll never forget. Outside, the office has begun to settle into its new reality. Employees are adjusting to the knowledge that Daniel is no longer in charge. Some are cautious, waiting to see what kind of leader I'll be. Others are openly relieved. And some, like security, are ensuring that Daniel's departure is permanent. Claire, my assistant, steps into the office a few minutes later. Miss Carter, she says, holding up her phone, security just informed me that Daniel was officially escorted out of the building. I nod, unsurprised. And his access? Revoked. Mark grins. Nothing like watching a man lose his keycard to reality. I glance at Claire. Good. I don't want him anywhere near this company again. She hesitates. There's one more thing. I raise an eyebrow. Go on. Claire exhales, glancing at her phone again. He didn't leave quietly. Apparently, as he was being removed, he started shouting about how this company would fall apart without him. That he'd be back. Mark scoffs. Desperate. I meet Claire's gaze. Did he say anything specific? She nods. He kept repeating that you made the wrong enemy. That you'll regret pushing him out. I nod slowly, absorbing the information. Let him rant. It won't change a thing. Claire gives a firm nod before stepping back out. Mark watches me for a long moment. You're not worried? I shake my head. No. He has nothing left here. Mark's expression turns serious. Olivia, I know you won today, but men like Daniel, they don't just disappear. If he's threatening that he'll come back, he's not just talking about a lawsuit or bad PR. I meet his gaze steadily. Then let him try. I didn't fight my way here just to be afraid of him now. Mark studies me for a moment, then nods. All right, but let's stay prepared. I glance back toward the window, my fingers tapping against my desk. We have work to do. Mark smirks. Yes, boss. The word lingers between us, a reminder that I am now in control. And I will not fail. The rest of the day is a whirlwind of restructuring. My first order of business is calling a company-wide meeting. It's time for employees to hear, from me directly, what comes next. By the time I step into the largest conference hall in the building, hundreds of employees are gathered. Their faces are a mixture of anticipation, curiosity, and cautious optimism. I take my place at the front of the room. The murmurs fade. I let the silence stretch for a moment before I speak. Many of you have spent years under Daniel Hayes' leadership. My voice is strong, unwavering. You have worked under a system that valued appearances over effort, intimidation over respect, and hierarchy over talent. A few employees shift uncomfortably, but I see nods of agreement. That era, I say, is over. More murmurs. This time, ones of quiet relief. I won't stand here and tell you that change happens overnight, I continue. But I can promise you this, I will listen. I will respect the work you do. And this company will thrive, not because of arrogance at the top, but because of the people who keep it running every day. A few hands go up. I nod to one employee, a woman named Hannah from marketing. She stands. Does this mean there will be leadership changes beyond just Daniel? I nod. Yes. Any executive who thrived under Daniel's toxic culture will be evaluated. If they cannot adapt, they will be removed. A few employees exchange surprised glances. They weren't expecting me to be this direct. Good. Another employee, a man named Greg from accounting, raises his hand. What about salaries? Promotions? I smile faintly. Let's just say that people who deserve promotions will finally get them. A ripple of quiet excitement moves through the crowd. For years, Daniel's company culture has kept employees stagnant, ensuring that only those in his inner circle advanced. That ends now. By the time the meeting concludes, the mood in the company has shifted. Hope. It's something this company hasn't felt in years. That evening, as I step back into my office, Claire is waiting with an update. Employee morale is up, she reports with a small smile. And the executive team is nervous. I nod. Good. Claire hesitates, then adds, but there's been an external inquiry. I frown. From who? She hands me a tablet. A media outlet reached out. They heard about the leadership change and are requesting a comment. I skim through the request. It's a well-known business journal, one that Daniel used to love courting for attention. I consider my response for a moment. Then, I tap out a reply. The leadership change at Carter Enterprises was necessary. Moving forward, the company will prioritize integrity, employee respect, and sustainable success. Change is here, and it's long overdue. Claire reads it, then smiles. Simple. Strong. I nod. Send it out. She does. By morning, headlines will be shifting. Daniel's reign is over. And mine has begun. The city outside hums with life as I settle into my chair, gazing out over the skyline. Tomorrow, the real work begins. I won the battle. Now, I will build something stronger than Daniel Hayes ever imagined. And if he tries to fight back, he'll learn, again, that he should never have underestimated me. The morning air is crisp, carrying the hum of the city as I step out of my car and into the lobby of Carter Enterprises. The glass doors reflect the rising sun, a symbol of the new era taking shape within these walls. The weight of what I've accomplished settles on my shoulders, not as a burden, but as a solid truth. Daniel Hayes is gone. The company is mine. And now, it's time to ensure the future I envisioned comes to life. Claire greets me at the elevator, her tablet in hand, her expression unreadable. Morning, Miss Carter, she says. You have a packed schedule today. The first executive meeting under your leadership, a follow-up with HR about department restructuring, and she hesitates. I glance at her. And Claire exhales. Daniel's already making noise. I'm not surprised. What kind of noise? She hands me her tablet, and I scan the news headlines. Former CEO Daniel Hayes claims company is in turmoil after his removal. Power struggle at Carter Enterprises. Was this a hostile takeover? Can Olivia Carter lead? Experts weigh in on the unexpected leadership shift. I let out a slow breath. He didn't waste any time. Claire shakes her head. He's painting himself as the victim, claiming he was blindsided, that his removal was reckless, that the company will collapse without him. I smirk. He must be desperate if he's already playing the martyr. Mark steps into the elevator just before the doors close, shaking his head as he reads through the articles. Morning, Olivia. Or should I say, the woman who single-handedly ruined a company overnight. His tone is laced with sarcasm. I roll my eyes. Let me guess. He's calling board members, trying to gather support. Mark nods. Some of them, yes. But it won't work. The vote was final. He has no legal way back in. That won't stop him from trying, I murmur. Claire frowns. Do you want to issue a public response? I shake my head. No, not yet. If I respond now, I'd give his claims weight. Let him scream into the void. Mark smirks. I like this version of you. I arch a brow. You mean the version of me that's always been here? He chuckles. Exactly. The elevator doors slide open to the executive floor. Employees are already bustling about, their expressions more focused than I've seen in years. There's a different energy in the air, one of anticipation, of change. I walk toward the boardroom, where my first executive meeting as CEO is about to begin. The room is full when I enter. The remaining executives, the department heads, people who once answered to Daniel. Now, they answer to me. I take my seat at the head of the table, letting the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. Let's get to work. For the next hour, we go through restructuring plans, budget allocations, and leadership assessments. Some executives are eager to prove their worth in this new regime. Others, I can tell, are skeptical. I don't mind. Let them be. Actions, not words, will show them the kind of leader I am. Toward the end of the meeting, one of the department heads clears his throat. Ms. Carter, if I may? I nod. He leans forward slightly. With all due respect, the transition has been sudden. There's concern among our clients and investors. Some of them have worked with Mr. Hayes for years. How do we assure them that this company is stable? It's a fair question. I rest my hands on the table. By showing them. The room waits. We don't need to talk about stability. We need to be stable. That means making smarter decisions, treating employees with respect, and proving through results that this company is stronger without Daniel Hayes. I glance around the table. If we do our jobs well, the doubt will fade on its own. A few executives nod. One of them, a woman named Evelyn, smiles slightly. Straightforward. I like it. Then let's get to work, I say. The meeting concludes, and the weight of leadership fully settles on me. I don't hesitate. I move forward. By mid-afternoon, the tone of the office has shifted. Employees are focused, executives are adjusting, and for the first time in years, the building feels alive. Then, my phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming. I stare at the message, my jaw tightening. Daniel. I should have known he wouldn't go quietly. Mark steps into my office just as I set my phone down. You heard? I nod. He's making threats. Mark scoffs. Predictable. Do you want to take legal action? Not yet, I murmur. He wants a reaction. I won't give him one. Mark studies me. You're not worried? I meet his gaze. No. He's the one who should be worried. Mark smirks. That's my CEO. I let out a breath. Let's focus on the company. If Daniel wants a war, he'll be fighting alone. That evening, I step onto the rooftop of the building, the city stretching out before me in endless lights and motion. I think about everything it took to get here. The years of patience. The quiet planning. The moments when I could have spoken up but chose instead to watch. And now I stand at the top, not because I demanded power, but because I earned it. Daniel Hayes underestimated me. He never saw me as a threat. Now I am the most powerful person in his world. I take a deep breath, feeling the weight of my victory, the possibilities of the future unfolding before me. This is my company now, my legacy, and I will lead it my way. Daniel will try to fight. He will try to claw his way back. But I am not afraid, because at the end of the day, there's one undeniable truth. I won, and I will never be overlooked again,